Okay, so tonight we are going to hear from Chris from Idaho.
Spokane, Washington now.
Okay, okay. They moved out there quite a few years ago. And we first met, if I remember correctly, in Michigan at a retreat.
Crystal Mountain, probably, right?
Yes, yes. That's where I remember first meeting you. So, and Chris is you're a pastor, right?
Well, I work for the Catholic Diocese out here. I work in Michigan. I worked for a church, and then in Boise, I worked for the diocese, which is sort of the headquarters, if you will. And
okay.
Similar situation here in Washington.
Okay. I always thought you were a youth pastor.
Oh, I was a long time ago, yeah.
Okay, so things have changed. Awesome. So anyways, but you've been involved in Shaklee for quite a while now as well.
I think 13 years.
Wow, time goes by so fast.
It does go by fast.
Yes, everybody always has a good story to share. So if you would go ahead and share your story and save our day today.
You bet. Our story is probably, I consider us the average Joes who were sick but didn't know it. We were much like, I guess, we were in our early 30s, and at that point, Rose and I had already had 5 kids. We got married when we were in our early 20s. We were part of a real dynamic church with a lot of young families. We followed suit, and then as you age and you get older, things creep up on you. You don't realize they're happening, but some of the things we were experiencing were weight gain, fatigue, and then just dealing with some issues that I guess we thought were normal. I remember hearing in the early presentations we had with Roland that sick is normal, and so we definitely fit that category. And so, but what prompted us to do something about our health? Well, first we made a go at it by ourselves. We had been inspired to make some changes in our health, and so we took a look at supplementation, but it was only through our chiropractor, and to be honest with you, we didn't notice a difference when we took them. So it was kind of, we could take it or leave it. We didn't get all that excited about them. And so when a friend of ours, her name is Deb Hedworth, came to us talking about how she was improving her health, we were kind of like, okay, whatever. But the one thing I think that had us take a little pause to what she had to say is, she was so sick from many things, to the point of being bedridden for several days during the month. She was so sick and she was seeing improvement, that we thought we would take a look, because again, like I said, we at the same time were trying to make a go at better health on our own, and we thought, okay, we'll take a look at it. And so then we were introduced to another couple, Jeff and Cindy Patton, who are helping out Deb Hedworth. And Cindy came over to our house, and I remember she shared the basics with us. At that time, we had the Vitalizer was called Basics. She shared that with us, and the protein, gave us some samples. We tried it. I thought, oh, this doesn't taste too bad. I think I can do this. And so we embarked on taking just the basics and protein. And I remember, I got to fill in a few things here too. Another thing I was dealing with, when I said we were getting tired, I was dealing with pretty massive fatigue from sleep apnea, which I was kind of in the midst of discovering that I had. And I had just been to the sleep doctor, and they diagnosed me with sleep apnea. And the next step was to send me off to the ear, nose, and throat person to see what I needed to have done. But thankfully, I never had to go, and my energy returned. I remember just after, wow, it must have been within the first few weeks of using Shackley, and again, at this time, I'm just using the basics, and the basics would have been Vital E, Vita C, Vita E, and B complex, and the protein. And I remember pulling in the driveway and looking over at Rose, and I just said, is this for real? Like, I actually feel like I have energy again. This is good. And Rose would get so mad at me because when we would get in the car to go on a trip, I would be so exhausted I'd have to have her drive while I slept. And so that energy returned for me. And then, you know, Cindy talked to us about some other things we could do to help with some things, again, that I thought were normal and that you just had to deal with as you aged. And that was allergy-induced asthma, which I was on some medication for that. So I quit taking that, and I started taking alfalfa. And I started taking 10 alfalfa in the morning and 10 alfalfa in the afternoon. And 13 years later, I still do the same thing, and my allergies are gone. My sinuses are clear. Yeah, so that's been huge for me. I've always struggled with allergies. If Rose was to have me clean out the garage and I kick up all that dust, I would be in major trouble. But not with the alfalfa. And I do believe too, because of the other basic supplements that I took and still take every day on a regular basis without fail, to the point if I forget to bring them when I leave for the day, I will turn around and go back and get them, because I know how I feel when I'm using the Shackley supplements. And you all who are listening probably know also, and that's why you take them every day. But the simple consistency of using even the Vital E and protein make a tremendous difference in that, what I would kind of call the base energy level you have, just the acuity that you have. I think a lot of people who are getting tired in the afternoon, their mind begins to wander what they want to snack on or things like that. I think a lot of that would be solved with some simple, with a very simple program in Shackley. And then the beauty from there is, just like with Cindy, she helped us find the next step, things that we needed for our health. So that was me. Now, Rose, at that time we had 5 of our 7 kids. She was tired all the time. She would drink a pot of coffee to just do the day, take a nap. She also began using the same program, the basics and the protein. And then as we went, we added the calcium. At that time, it wasn't called that osteomatrix, but the equivalent of that now. And she began to feel a return of energy. And the real beauty for her was she was suffering on a regular basis from migraine headaches. And soon after we started Shackley, again, it was kind of like that ear, nose, and throat situation with me. I never went back for my sleep apnea. Rose never went back to the chiropractor, and just very rarely ever goes. But she would go to get adjusted to relieve the tension off of her head. But using the Shackley products totally took care of that. And then all the kids we had, the kids were dealing with a few different things. Maddie was dealing with some skin eczema. Anna was dealing with constipation, and we put the kids on Ocean Wonders was the kids' product back then, and we had them taking the protein on a regular basis. And again, all these things began to self-correct themselves. So as we were doing this, people were noticing a physical change in us because we were also losing weight, just because we were using the products, eating healthy, we were exercising. But I want to say this though, I already was exercising, and we were trying to eat somewhat healthier. So the supplements made a huge difference. The protein really made a big difference in terms of what I ate during the day. And so being able to take the protein and receive receive the protein I needed, plus have that, you know, I don't know if you remember seeing the little chart that they had about how some food spikes our glucose, and then we have a fast drop off somewhere. I think it's in the old catalog. It might be in the same, might be in our new catalog now too, but it shows that graph where you get your energy boost from the protein, but then it's a slow let off. And I think that slow let off is what was the spot that helped me succeed in losing weight. So people are asking, what are you doing? And at that point, there was something else going on in our lives. As Nina mentioned, I was working at a church as a youth minister, and so the pay wasn't awesome, and I was always looking for ways to round out my financial situation. So thankfully, during college, I worked for a builder, so I was always picking up extra work, but that meant that I was working on a Saturday or working all evening, putting in somebody's door or window or redoing their bathroom or whatever. And so when people began to ask us about what are we doing with Shackley, and we were naturally excited in telling them about it, when I was invited to go to a presentation to hear about the business, I thought, why not? Let's go. And I remember Rose and I went, and Deb and her husband Russ came kicking and screaming, but he came. And we went and we listened. And Russ was kind of like, what do you think about all this? And I said, I think I'm going to do it, is what I think. And Deb was already excited to do it. She probably already had sort of begun at that time. She began 1 month ahead of us starting her business. She became a director in 4 weeks. And Rose and I became directors in 8 weeks. And if you said, how did you do it? You're on the phone call that takes or the Zoom that takes place after this one tells you how to do that. We just did what Roland told us to do, and we made our invites. We followed the advice about asking lots of questions, and we got people to come over to our house and listen to presentations, and we began building a customer base and helping people with the same things that we were being helped with Shackley. And some of those same folks that sat in our living room 13 years ago are still purchasing products from us every single month. So it's been quite a joy and a journey. So a few other pieces to go along with that would be that sometime after we started, Shackley came out with a program that's equivalent to our 180 program for weight loss, and it was called Cinch. And Rose and I saw that and thought, you know, we've lost some weight with Shackley, not trying too hard, but let's go on this program and see what happens. And we both really cut down to the weight where we wanted to, especially Rose at that time. Now, after having 7 children, I think she lost something like 21 inches off her body, which was always the story we told with the weight loss products. I remember there was a presentation I just did last week for a girl who was using the 180 program, and I said, how are things going? She goes, I don't know. I've only lost 8 pounds. And I said, okay, well, how are your measurements? And she goes, oh, let me see. She lost 12 or 14 inches off her body. And that was the beauty of
wow,
helping people with these great products to do things the right way and in a healthy way, leaning on what we know about the amount of time Shackley puts into their products, that we can trust it to use it ourselves. We can trust it to share with others. And so we used that program, and I remember one time it just came out, and I asked people in my group, who wants to try this? You guys can be the test group, see what happens. And I think our group lost 6 feet off of all of our bodies. But here's the thing, though. So that was, I don't know, when did Cinch come out? 2008 or 9? I don't know, somewhere back near then. And here we are today at about the same weight. So a lot of people use a lot of programs where they do it and they lose the weight, but unfortunately they get in a position where they're just right back in the same situation, looking for the next best thing to help them. So we felt blessed by that. And in it was 2012, we moved out to Boise. And a year after that, in 2013, Boise, if you don't know, it's right on the foothills of the Sawtooth Mountains, the Boise Mountains, part of the Rocky Mountains. Wonderful trail systems for hiking and mountain biking. And Rose, unfortunately, we were coming down on our mountain bikes, and she crashed really bad. And she was unconscious. She later on we would find that she broke her collarbone in 5 places, broke her finger, broke multiple ribs, had to be airlifted out of the foothills because they were trying to assess her condition and she wasn't quite coming to. And we didn't really know the ramifications of it at that point. And she took off in the helicopter, went to the hospital. The first responders gave me a ride to the hospital. I got there, and I didn't know that it would end up being that she would be in such a bad situation that she had a massive head injury, and she really kind of lost her motor skills, had to learn how to re-walk. And it was hard to understand what was going on at the time because we didn't know the extent of the injury. So she spent a couple weeks in the hospital, had to learn how to re-walk. But then I remember one night we were in the hospital, and we were looking at sinks for our house, and we were on the computer, and just that act of going through, looking at all those sinks and trying to decide what we wanted to have and all this stuff, got her mind going. She couldn't turn it off, so she couldn't sleep that night. And that was the first kind of insight we had to how her injury would affect her. So now it's a similar thing. So if she has too much stimulus, her mind just can't take it all in. So it's likened to, we all have a 5-gallon bucket to hold life in before we get stressed out, before we fill that bucket and we get stressed. Rose has like a coffee cup. And so for her, there's been some key Shaklee products that have really, really helped her. One is Vivix, has really helped. The other is, and this is beyond the basics that we take all the time, meaning protein, Vital E, B-complex, osteomatrix, all that stuff. The other one is, what really helps her is stress relief. So when her mind just gets active and it can't shut off, stress relief really helps her. So if there's a day where we're doing a lot of planning, or even now we moved up to this house here, which it needs a lot of major cosmetic stuff. So we're doing a lot of thinking and planning and stuff like this. And so go to lay down and go to bed, it's hard sometimes for her to turn it off, but stress relief just takes that edge off and she's able to fall asleep. So that's been really key for us. So the other pieces of what makes Shaklee so wonderful for us too is that along this whole journey, number one, the products just work personally so great for us. Number two is we've been able to help literally hundreds of people with Shaklee products. And then, and because of that, it's provided an income for us over these 13 years. So when I think about, different things that are taking place in our life and a better paying job for me, and I look at our Shaklee business, it's like there's no way, despite how well I do in my job, that I want to let go what we've been gifted through Shaklee. And in fact, I always say this, sometimes it's difficult to go to your boss and ask for a raise. Usually the answer is no. But in Shackley, if you want a raise, you just share Shackley with more people, and you can give yourself a raise. So that it's been a real beautiful thing for us to know that in those moments where finances were tight and hard, that we always had an answer, and it was just a matter of if we wanted to work harder in Shackley. So to us, I can't really put words to it to describe what a blessing it's been for us. And I think about those who look on from the outside and just see Shackley as another business like everything else they see, or another product like what they see out there. And it's unfortunate. And I always remember, I don't know if it was you, Roland, who said it, or it was somebody else, but the question was, well, if Shackley's so great, why isn't it in the stores? And part of that answer is because it needs the story to be told, because it's unique and unlike anything else. So yeah, I guess, Nina, that's about all I would have to say. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
That was wonderful, Chris. You know, it's been a long time since I've heard your story, but it's so good to hear that again. And you forget about a lot of that stuff that happened. So I thank you for jumping in and doing this for us. But I want to ask one question to you, because you alluded to it a couple of times, was we were getting older. How old was that back then?
When we started Shackley, we were 33 years old.
I find that so interesting to hear people refer to that. In fact, I did a live on that a little while ago, that people think they're getting older in their 30s, and so that excuses why they're getting sicker. And it's like, no, you're still a young kid in your 30s.
Yeah, I remember my joints and everything being so stiff that I remember sneezing and my back would hurt, or trying to put on my socks, and I was just so like, I was a little bit of a mess. But I think that, you know, if you're not taking care of yourself properly, the onset of aging comes faster. Roland was always an inspiration, because we heard he was out riding bikes and sailing and doing all this stuff, and we thought, okay, we'll be like that when we get older.
And jumping in the lake and going swimming in freezing cold weather.
Yeah.
We're doing that too.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so interesting what we do today. We don't, you know, we may not find ourselves or think that we're sick, but what we do today will affect where we are 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I always think about years ago when I was doing consults with younger people that start falling apart in their 30s, and I'd say, well, let's look back to where you were 10 years ago. What were you doing? What was your lifestyle like? What were you eating? What were you, were you skipping meals? A lot of times that's a partying time for a lot of people, and it destroys their body. And they make it through that just fine and don't think about it. But what happens 10 years later? And I think that is happening much faster today than what it used to. Especially,
I agree.
Oh, I tell you what, my son is very involved with farmers to help them. He's on a lot of different committees, and he was just, I don't remember where he was just recently, but anyways, he heard a talk from these people that are making meat in a lab. They're taking a cell and they're growing that cell in test tubes, and they're making meat. They're making beef, they're making chicken, and they're making fish. And they're growing this in test tubes, and it makes me sick to my stomach to think, what's going to happen when they perfect this and people start consuming it? We look at all the food, how the food's gone down, but then when the meat goes way down on top of it, and you didn't have that even as an issue, and you were falling apart. So I really, really appreciate you jumping in and sharing your story tonight. Does anybody have any questions for him? You did such a good job, Chris. Roland looks like he's trying to unmute there.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's so nice to hear your story again. And you know, these stories are so important because I still tell your story at meetings. And I talk about how when you were getting started with Shackley, and you said, "Yeah, we can now buy tennis shoes for the kids."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I repeat that story many times to show your picture, all your kids. It's lovely. So thank you for being such an ambassador for Shackley.
It's so cool too, because how many pastors or people that work in churches or on missions or whatever that can use the extra money, like you said, for you guys. There's a lot of people like that. So, and the blessings that it's given to you. So I very much appreciate you taking your time tonight, Chris, and I wish you all the best, and it was good to see you again. And I am going to be gone. I forgot to put that on the email. I'm going to Greece. So there will not be a Tuesday testimonial for the next 2 Tuesdays. So the 28th will be our next one, and I will send out an email then. So, oh, I forgot to shut this off.